Boo!
Well, man, last story of the night. You got a good lengthy one here?
Yes, I do. We're gonna be chasing a couple rabbits down some holes here on this one too. All right, so this story is tangentially we're gonna call it the Ghost Lady on the Beach because that's the name of the initial story. But after the story, I'm actually going to go on to another thing that I believe is connected, and I have reasonable evidence that these are all connected. So, the story. Many of us encounter someone who just grabs our attention in a way we can't explain. Like they know you from this or a previous life. I come from a long line of people who have encountered ghosts, but I myself, I don't encounter the supernatural that much. Tonight, I know I did. Our town is near a beach, and every 4th of July, we go and see the fireworks over the water. This year was no exception. Me and my wife arrived and set up chairs. We settled into the sand and chilled out, waiting for darkness to fall and the fireworks to start. There's a slight breeze, a perfect, beautiful evening. About 20 minutes after we settled in, I smelled a waft of what I could only describe as decayed roses on the breeze. Like flowers in a vase that should have been thrown out a few days ago. It wasn't a bad smell, but just like sweet roses that weren't fresh. And then I saw her. From behind walked a young woman in jeans, t-shirt, and ball cap. She looked about 25-ish. Had light brown wavy hair coming down halfway on her back. I was immediately struck by her presence. Not because she was overtly beautiful. She wasn't ugly by any means. She was definitely pretty. But something about her was off. Her face especially looked weird. Like her features didn't line up right or something. She stopped about 15 feet ahead of us and turned around. She looked right at me and smiled. And then sat down in the sand. At this point, I could guess what was really off about her was her smile. Her teeth kind of looked all smooth and just not natural. Something was amiss. I was enchanted by just the sight of her, though. I couldn't put it out of my head. I looked at my wife to see what she thought of this person, but she had no reaction, like she didn't even see her. I smelled the decaying roses again. This young woman in jeans and ball cap sat down, took off her flip-flops, and looked to the sky. She was sitting perpendicular to us, but facing away. When I thought about it, 2 more things struck me as very odd. She had no electronics, no cell phone. Everyone on the beach was taking selfies and playing with their phones. Even the older people were. This young woman had no visible phone at all. Her clothes also were strange. They were straight out of the 1970s. I grew up in the early 70s, so I know what normal people looked like back then, and she had that look. Totally down to the way her jeans and shirt. She seemed very content just sitting there looking at the sky and not worried about anything. And I still could smell those roses. I took a picture of the whole scene on my cell phone. The pretty sky, the beach, and the strange woman. Shortly after, she got up and walked away behind us. I turned around to see where she went, but she disappeared. She was gone. When I got home, I looked at the picture. I was not surprised to see she was not in it. You can bring that up now. You might think I freaked out, but on a spiritual level, I really didn't expect her to show up in this image. Just a green orb where she was sitting in the sand. I'm calm because I know I could tell that she meant no harm. She just wanted to be around us. I really believe she was a person who passed away back in the 70s. I just can't put it together right now, but if I do, I'll update. You can see the green orb sitting there on the ground, which is a very unusually green orb and rather large. So people put some things together. Now, this story is 2 years ago. 2 years ago on 4th of July, so it's coming up on 2 years. This is where we're about to start talking about a different person, possibly, but what I believe is this person. And she was known as the Lady of the Dunes. This was until 2022, 2 years ago. This person was never identified, but was murdered in 1974 on 4th of July. She was found decaying on the beach. It was near where people would normally show up. They just hadn't been there in that exact area for a few days. There was blood in the sand, but they believe the body was staged there. It was brought there after having been killed somewhere else. It was discovered on July 26th. By this point, animals and bugs and such had decayed the body to the point that there was no chance of visual identification. She was wearing jeans. She had a t-shirt, and they were underneath her body, though. She had been stripped nude. And she was also laying on top of a green towel. Her face was deliberately disfigured to prevent identification, with many of her teeth cut out from her mouth. They also had cut off her hands and one of her forearms. The police believed that they were trying to prevent identification from any possible tells. The body appeared to be a woman in her early 20s to early 30s. In fact, they believe her to be 25 years old, as the man in this story mentioned that he thought the person looked like. She was also nearly decapitated. Her neck was cut almost clean through. There was also signs of assault, likely post-mortem. This person went unidentified for a long time, but then they started doing reconstruction on what they believe her face looked like. Now, this set up an odd scenario. Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King, was looking at the reconstructed face one night, and he happened to be watching Jaws, the ultimate 4th of July movie, and there's a scene where there's an extra who looks at the screen wearing blue jeans and a shirt very similar to what was described as on that body, and then she looks away, and he says the face, took a screenshot of it and everything, he said the face looks so similar that he was like, could this be the woman? Has she been in plain sight as an extra? She would have been in the area when they were filming the movie. They never could figure out who it was because by this point there's no list of who was extras that day. 2022, a few months after this man has his reported encounter with a ghost on the beach, they reopened the case in late August, and they were able to determine using new technologies that this is a woman who went missing in 1974 when her husband took her on a vacation in the area. He came back saying that she joined a cult and was leaving the family. And everyone tried to find her, but they never could. And her name is Ruth Mary Terry. And they said that it was actually 37 years old, but everyone who saw her said that she looked like she was in her early 20s because she was a very fit woman. She also looks virtually identical to both the woman in Jaws and in the reconstructions. They are certain that they have found the right person, and they are also certain that her husband murdered her. Unfortunately, he died in 2002 and was never brought to justice for the murder. I did some digging on if there was anything special about the color green. I went through a couple different spiritualist websites to check on that. And it does stand for a few things. One is obviously renewal, rebirth, but it also stands for safe passage through realms. Here is my belief on what happened here. I believe that she knew that very soon her murder was going to be solved, and she just desperately wanted someone to see her one last time on 4th of July. So she walked out, didn't care who it was, just thought, I want someone to know that I was here. And now her spirit has finally gotten some amount of peace with knowledge of her murder finally solved after all these years.
Wow. And there's the image.
I thought the fact that the beach towel was green as well was an interesting tidbit of information. The body was laying on a green beach towel.
Wow. If this picture was like hoax, they'd probably try to do a little bit more than the orb.
Yeah. I want to point out that there's This guy was not connected in any way, shape, or form with the other story. He doesn't know, or when he posted this story, he didn't know about the Lady in the Dunes.
Right.
It just so happens in the right area. It's the right time of year, and it is like 60 days or 55 days before the murder is solved on the 38th anniversary of her death.
Yeah.
This would be the 40th this year.
Wow.
Crazy.
What a beautiful picture, though.
Yeah, it is. I get that feeling. I know that feeling. He said, when you can see someone and you know that there's something different. There are times where I've seen people that I can't explain why. I was certain that they weren't real, like normal people, you know?
Yeah.
Like you'll see someone and you just look at them and you're like, these are not humans. Not that they're mean you any harm, but you'll see someone and you're like, this is something else. And I mean, it's only happened like once or in my life, but it's happened. When I read this story, I was like, this is the story. This is my story. This signifies the most 4th of July thing I can think of. It is a terrible, tragic event that actually happened with this woman. And it is comforting to know that they at least figured it out finally after all those years. This Jane Doe finally being identified. And on top of that, they solved the murder because they knew it had to be this guy who told everybody that she just left him.
First off, well done. But the, I guess, investigation of this, put a lot of work into this. This was really neat. I'm just looking at that picture, thinking why she was there in that moment. Like, that's kind of like the $1 million question, I guess.
I just think she wanted to be seen. And I think she knew that it was happening. I also believe that whatever plane of existence there is besides this one doesn't follow the same rules of time. I feel like she knew that eventually she was going to be found out that it was what was happening, and this was as close to the two events as possible. So it was like as close to the anniversary of her death, and as close to when she will be, or what will be revealed of how she died. And
Right.
she just wanted to be like around someone again. I believe that I do believe that spirits do have that power, and I do believe that she showed up that day, just wanting to experience 4th of July again, wanting to experience being around people, and just to celebrate the fact that she knew that her murder was going to be solved.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really amazing story. A lot of people in the chat are saying that too. It's crazy that this guy has probably no clue, So what made you connect this? Was it just
There was someone in the comments, a more recent comment from a couple of years. So this story was posted a couple of years ago. The guy actually said that he went home that night and typed it out because it was so striking to him. Well, there was someone who later commented on it like a year ago saying, this sounds like this lady. And so I looked into it, and then I was reading it. I was like, there's no way it's not that lady.
right?
And then I was like, okay, well, is there anything else there? That's why I started looking up Green, and then I also was looking up. I found out about Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, and he believed sure that was that woman as well. And this was years and years before they, knew who she was. I don't know. It was just, and also that her husband took her in that area right around when they would be filming this movie. So everything's lining up. It's like all the stars aligned. This woman, one of the last times she was alive, probably in the film Jaws.
Hmm.
And then now here she is, finally, gotten, what's the word I'm looking for here? The justice of at least being known that she was murdered by her husband.
Yeah, what a POS, huh? Connection to Jaws is crazy. That's such a legendary movie.
And it's the 4th of July movie.
Exactly.
This was as 4th of July a story as you could have.
Yeah.
Except for the fireworks thing. Good Lord. That was nuts.
This is neat, though. It's cool how you and others have looked further into this. And I guess really my biggest thing is hope she can rest in peace now.
Yeah, I hope so, too. Yeah, I believe she is. I believe 100% that was she was free, or knew that she was going to be free. She no longer had any connection to the world because now her story's known. And then people would know if there was anyone that was still alive in her family that didn't know what happened to her. At least now they would. Or friends, stuff like that. It's one hand, it's you got the gross story of what this person did to that person, the way they treated their body. And then you have this sort of striking story at the beach of this guy's encounter with this spirit. And then the overall, I feel like a consolation, or I feel better about the fact that we at least know the story now and we know how it ended. While it ended terribly, I feel like for her, she's going to finally rest fully in peace.
Absolutely. Well, man, I think I don't have anything else to say about this one. What an incredible story, though.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?